The diplomatic station Oriones Theta floated in the serene void between three-star systems, a monument to interspecies cooperation and bureaucratic excellence. Inside its gleaming corridors, where the atmosphere was precisely calibrated to accommodate 17 different respiratory systems, the greatest minds of the Galactic Federation gathered for what they believed would be another routine cultural exchange symposium. They were, as it turned out, magnificently wrong. The Crystari delegation occupied their usual position in Conference Hall Beta, their crystalline bodies refracting the ambient light into perfect geometric patterns. Today's presentation concerned the mathematical principles governing stellar decay, a topic that had fascinated the logic-driven species for approximately 4,000 standard years. The room hummed with the quiet efficiency of beings who had long ago evolved beyond such primitive concepts as emotion, imagination, or the need for coffee breaks. Ambassador Jonathan Hayes of Earth's Diplomatic Corps sat in the back row, reviewing his notes for the upcoming trade negotiations. His daughter Mira, 6 years old and possessed of an imagination that could populate entire universes with dragons, unicorns, and sentient cheese wheels, was supposed to be in the station's childcare facility. The universe, however, had other plans. The security door hissed open with a particular sound that suggested someone very small had somehow acquired someone very important's access codes. Mira Hayes wandered into the conference hall, clutching a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days and wearing mismatched socks with enthusiasm that only a 6-year-old could muster. The Crystari presenter, a being whose name translated roughly to infinite logic pattern third resonance, but who the humans called Bob for simplicity, paused mid-equation. The entire delegation turned their faceted heads toward the small human, their bodies shifting through the color spectrum in what passed for curiosity among their kind. "Excuse me," Mira announced in the clear, carrying voice of a child who had never met a room she couldn't command. "Do any of you have monsters under your beds?" The universal translator worked overtime, processing the query through 17 different linguistic matrices. The word monster caused a brief feedback loop that made several attending species' auditory organs twitch. The concept of under the bed required additional processing power, as the gaseous entities of Proxima 5 didn't use beds, and the hive minds of Betelgeuse 7 considered the entire concept of individual sleeping arrangements to be wastefully inefficient. Bob's crystalline form flickered through several shades of confused ultraviolet. "Please define monster," he requested, his voice resonating at precisely calibrated frequencies designed to convey logical inquiry without emotional inflection. Mira, delighted to have an audience, launched into an explanation that would inadvertently reshape galactic sleeping habits for generations to come. Monsters are scary things that live under your bed. They have big teeth and claws, and they wait until you're asleep to grab your feet if you let them hang over the edge. But they're scared of light, so if you have a night light, they can't get you. Also, teddy bears are scientifically proven monster repellents. The room fell silent. Not the comfortable silence of contemplation, but the profound quiet that occurs when several highly advanced civilizations simultaneously realize they may have overlooked something fundamental about the nature of reality. Ambassador Hayes rushed forward, his face cycling through the colors of diplomatic embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, everyone. Mira, sweetheart, you're supposed to be in daycare. These nice beings are having an important meeting about grown-up things. But the damage, if one could call the complete disruption of galactic sleep patterns damage, was already done." The Crystari delegation had shifted to a deep amber that indicated priority data processing. The thought weavers of Andromeda Beta exchanged rapid telepathic bursts that accidentally leaked into nearby neural networks, causing 3 service robots to begin fortifying the ventilation systems. The usually stoic metallic sentients started running calculations on the theoretical possibility of non-corporeal entities existing in localized dimensional pockets adjacent to sleeping furniture. "This requires immediate investigation," declared Bob, his form now pulsing with the fervor of scientific discovery. "If such entities exist, they represent a significant security threat to all Federation members. We must determine their nature, their capabilities, and most importantly, their vulnerabilities. Mira beamed, pleased that adults were finally taking the monster situation seriously. My daddy says monsters aren't real, but I know better. Sometimes I hear them whispering about eating toes. The Federation's most brilliant minds exchanged what would have been worried glances if half of them had possessed conventional ocular organs. The child's casual certainty was disturbing. If humans, despite their relatively recent emergence on the galactic stage, had developed countermeasures against these monsters, what did that say about the threat level? The rest of the symposium was indefinitely postponed as the greatest scientific minds in the galaxy turned their attention to what would become known as the underbed entity crisis. Within hours, the first scientific papers were being circulated through the Federation's quantum networks. The Crystari's initial analysis of potential subfurniture entities ran to 47 pages and included complex mathematical models proving that the space beneath sleeping platforms could theoretically harbor anything that couldn't be directly observed. The hive minds contributed collective dreaming and dimensional vulnerabilities, a multi-consciousness perspective, which suggested that sleep states might create localized reality distortions. The philosophical implications were even more disturbing. If entities could exist purely because they couldn't be disproven, what other unobserved threats might be lurking in the dark corners of the galaxy? The debate raged through academic channels, military strategic planning sessions, and increasingly panicked civil defense meetings. The first reported incident came from the trading post on Rigel Prime. A Bathorian merchant, after reading the preliminary reports, had attempted to sleep in his quarters and experienced what he described as an overwhelming sensation of potentially predatory observation from the subplatform space. The fact that Bathorians didn't actually have feet to be grabbed was deemed irrelevant to the potential threat assessment. Emergency sessions were called. The Federal Safety Council, which hadn't convened since the Great Gravitational Anomaly of Sector 6, assembled to address what was officially designated as theoretical nocturnal predator presence. The military advisors argued for immediate action. The scientists demanded more data. The philosophers questioned whether fearing the monsters might actually bring them into existence through some form of quantum observation effect. Zen, an engineer from the Mechanist Collective, proposed the first practical solution. If these entities are photophobic, she reasoned, her metallic form gleaming under the emergency lighting that had become standard in all Federation facilities, then the logical response is complete illumination of all sub-furniture spaces. The Kintari representative, a being of pure energy who found the entire concept of physical furniture quaint, sparked anxiously. But the energy requirements alone would drain half our stellar generators. A small price for security, countered the warrior caste ambassador from the Siege Worlds, who had already begun retrofitting their battle armor with underbed lighting arrays. Market forces responded faster than bureaucracy. Within days, the Galactic Stock Exchange saw unprecedented movement. Companies manufacturing illumination devices saw their valuations increase by orders of magnitude. The previously obscure industry of comfort objects, stuffed animals, blankets with soothing textures, and what humans called blankies, experienced a renaissance. Entrepreneurial spirits flourished. The merchants of Deneb 6 began marketing monster-proof sleep pods with zero-shadow technology and integrated comfort protocols. The artisans of the craft worlds started producing what they called defensive comfort companions, essentially teddy bears equipped with multi-spectrum scanning arrays and miniaturized shield generators. The academic community split into factions. The empiricists demanded proof of monster existence before implementing galaxy-wide countermeasures. The theorists argued that the inability to disprove monsters was itself a form of evidence. The pragmatists suggested that even if monsters weren't real, the psychological benefits of anti-monster measures justified their implementation. Dr. Valith, the lead scientist on what was now called Project Underbed Space, published a landmark paper, Quantum Uncertainty and Nocturnal Entity Manifestation, a multidimensional analysis. The paper's core thesis was that the act of not observing underbed spaces created a quantum state where monsters both existed and didn't exist simultaneously. Only direct observation could collapse the wave function, but who wanted to risk being the observer? The first official monster preparedness drills were conducted on Station Gamma. The results were mixed. The silicon-based life forms performed admirably, maintaining defensive positions throughout the simulated night cycle. The gaseous entities had more difficulty, as they kept forgetting which spaces they were supposed to avoid floating through. The plant-based intelligences from Forest World simply grew additional roots and declared themselves immune to foot-grabbing. Cultural adaptations began to emerge. The warrior poets of Samurai 7 composed epic verses about brave warriors facing the darkness beneath their sleeping platforms. The song weavers of harmony created lullabies specifically designed to repel theoretical monsters, though the combination of subsonic frequencies and quantum harmonics had the unfortunate side effect of causing nearby electronics to achieve temporary sentience. Diplomatic relations strained as species accused each other of inadequate monster preparedness. The isolationist faction argued that monsters were clearly a human problem that humanity had failed to contain. The interventionists countered that monster security was a galactic responsibility. The fatalists suggested that if monsters were inevitable, perhaps the galaxy should just learn to coexist with them. Religious movements sprouted across known space. The Church of the Eternal Nightlight gained millions of converts across dozens of worlds. The disciples of the protective teddy bear established temples where giant stuffed guardians were worshipped as humanity's gift to galactic security. The underbed agnostics maintained that while they couldn't confirm or deny monster existence, it was probably best to keep the lights on just in case. Military strategists incorporated anti-monster protocols into their standard procedures. The famous siege of Antares 6 was delayed by 3 cycles when generals refused to establish command posts in structures with traditional bedding. The 4th Fleet's training manual was updated to include a chapter on nocturnal entity avoidance and comfortable combat sleep positions. The entertainment industry experienced a curious renaissance. Horror films about monsters became simultaneously more popular and more controversial. The blockbuster, It Came From Beneath the Bunk, broke box office records while sparking protests from parent groups who claimed it was unnecessarily validating juvenile fears. Children's programming began featuring brave characters who demonstrated proper monster-checking techniques, though several shows were pulled from airways after causing empire-wide insomnia among viewers. Educational curricula across the galaxy were hastily revised. Introduction to Underbed Safety became a required course at most academies. Advanced degrees in nocturnal threat assessment were offered by prestigious universities. The University of New Terra's Department of Imaginary Zoology saw its funding increase by 3,000%. Despite the chaos, or perhaps because of it, certain individuals thrived. Professor Maxwell Chun of Earth's Institute for Xenopsychology, who had been struggling for funding, suddenly found himself the galaxy's foremost expert on cognitive monster construction and cross-species fear transmission. His lecture series, What We Fear When We Fear the Dark, became required viewing for diploma certification on 17 worlds. The fashion industry adapted with characteristic speed. The haute couture houses of Fashion Central unveiled their Luminosafe evening wear collections, featuring garments with integrated photonic fibers that eliminated shadows. The practical clothing sector developed monster-resistant pajamas with reinforced foot coverage and emergency lighting systems. Sales of fuzzy slippers increased by 800% as beings across the galaxy decided that exposed feet were an unacceptable risk. Architecture underwent a revolution. The concept of beds with space beneath was questioned, challenged, and ultimately redesigned. The minimalists argued for sleeping platforms that extended directly to the floor, eliminating monster habitat entirely. The maximalists created elaborate sleeping chambers with multiple light sources, motion sensors, and what they called comfort redundancy systems. The psychological impact was profound. Support groups formed across the galaxy. Adults afraid of the dark became one of the fastest-growing therapeutic communities in federal space. The stigma of admitting to nocturnal anxiety disappeared overnight as even the most logical species acknowledged that darkness plus imagination equaled potential threat. Scientific research intensified. The Large Hadron Collider on Physics Station Alpha was repurposed to search for dark matter entities, with researchers arguing that what they had previously dismissed as mathematical artifacts might actually be monster signatures. The Psi-Corps investigated whether telepathic species were more or less vulnerable to monster presence, leading to the disturbing discovery that collective consciousness might actually amplify fear rather than diminish it. The economic impact was staggering. The galactic GDP shifted as resources were redirected from expansion and exploration to internal security and comfort optimization. The previously humble nightlight industry became a major economic force, with competing technologies and aesthetic designs flooding the market. The Great Light Wars of Sector 12 began when two competing comfort tech corporations began a hostile takeover battle that somehow involved actual battle cruisers. Several months into what historians would later call the Great Galactic Anxiety Period, the Federal Assembly convened for an emergency session. The proposal on the table was radical: the Universal Illumination Protocol, which would require constant lighting in all inhabited spaces, the elimination of all under-furniture gaps, and mandatory distribution of what were diplomatically termed comfort associates, teddy bears, to all sentient beings. The debate was fierce. The energy requirements alone would require the construction of 3 new Dyson spheres. The cultural implications of forcing traditionally nocturnal species to adapt to constant illumination sparked protests. The Darkness Preservation Society argued that their right to shadow was being infringed upon by monster hysteria. As tensions reached a breaking point, with several delegations threatening to withdraw from the Federation entirely, fate intervened in the form of a small human child. Once again, Mira Hayes had somehow bypassed security, leading to a complete overhaul of station access protocols and the resignation of 3 security chiefs. She wandered into the Grand Assembly Hall, still clutching her rabbit, now wearing a cape because Mr. Flopsy is a superhero today. The assembly fell silent as the child approached the central podium. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds watched as she climbed onto a chair to reach the microphones. The universal translators hummed with anticipation. "Why is everyone so scared?" Mira asked, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. "Don't you know the secret?" The assembly leaned forward collectively. Several recording devices experienced buffer overflows as every intelligence agency in the galaxy tried to capture what happened next. Mira looked around at the assembled aliens, her face scrunched in the expression of a child trying to explain something obvious to deliberately obtuse adults. "Monsters aren't real," she announced. "But if they were real, they're more scared of you than you are of them. That's why they hide under beds. They're not hunting you. They're hiding from you." She held up her stuffed rabbit. "That's why teddy bears work. It's not because they fight monsters. It's because when you hug them, you feel brave. And when you feel brave, monsters can't exist. They're allergic to bravery. It's science. To demonstrate." She hopped off the chair, marched to the darkest corner of the assembly hall, and roared into it with all the ferocity a 6-year-old could muster. "See? No monsters. They ran away because I'm not scared." The assembly remained frozen for precisely 17 seconds. Then, something unprecedented happened. The laughing trees of Humor Haven began to rustle their leaves in what they considered applause. The crystari flickered in patterns that, while not technically laughter, were as close as a logic-based species could approximate. Even the perpetually serious Void Watchers made sounds that could charitably be interpreted as chuckles. Dr. Valeth stood slowly, his crystalline form shifting through spectrums of what could only be described as academic embarrassment. "The child presents an interesting hypothesis," he admitted. "Our entire approach has been based on the assumption that monsters are external threats. But what if they're internal constructs, manifestations of our own uncertainties? Another scientist, Dr. Kelthani of the Mind Weavers, added, the proliferation of fear across species barriers suggests a psychological phenomenon rather than a physical one. We've been so focused on detecting monsters that we forgot to examine why we believe in them. The debate that followed was unlike any in federal history. Instead of the usual formal presentations and counterarguments, beings began sharing their own childhood fears. The metallic sentients admitted they used to be afraid of rust monsters. The cloud dancers confessed to ancient terrors of wind dispersal. Even the mighty warriors of Valhalla, 7, acknowledged that they once believed in armor-eating sprites. The solution, when it came, was beautifully simple. The Universal Illumination Protocol was scraped in favor of the Bravery Initiative. Instead of eliminating darkness, the Federation would teach courage. Instead of distributing mandatory teddy bears, they would encourage each species to identify their own comfort traditions. The Bravery Consultants were established as a new division of the Federation's cultural exchange program. Human children, recognized as natural experts in monster management, were invited to teach courses on applied courage and advanced monster negotiation techniques. Mira Hayes became the youngest consultant in federal history, complete with her own badge that read Official Monster Explainer. The economic shift was just as dramatic as the initial panic. The nightlight industry adapted, marketing their products as courage enhancers rather than monster deterrents. The comfort objects sector expanded to include culturally specific items. Memory crystals for the Crystari, harmony chimes for the Song Weavers, and miniature black holes for the Gravity Shepherds, though these required special permits. Military academies added psychological fortitude to their curriculums. The famous Battle of Sleeping Platforms, a war game exercise where commanders had to maintain position in darkened bunkers, became a standard test of leadership. The motto, brave in the dark, invincible in the light, was inscribed over the entrance to the Federation's primary command school. The scientific community redirected their research toward understanding the relationship between imagination and reality. The groundbreaking paper, Quantum Courage, How Bravery Collapses Probability Waves, won Dr. Valeth the Galactic Prize for Theoretical Psychology. The discovery that positive emotional states could influence quantum outcomes led to entirely new fields of study. Religious and philosophical movements evolved. The Church of the Eternal Night Light became the temple of inner illumination, teaching that the brightest light comes from within. The disciples of the protective teddy bear evolved into the Order of Comfort, dedicated to helping beings find their own sources of courage. New movements emerged. The followers of the fearless child, who believed that maintaining childlike wonder was the key to universal bravery. Cultural exchanges took on new meaning. The bravery festivals became annual events where species shared their traditional methods of courage cultivation. The vortex dancers performed their terror dissolution spins. The crystal singers harmonized fear fragmentation arias. Earth's contribution was usually a mix of blanket forts, hot chocolate, and stories about heroes who faced their fears. Art flourished. The great mural of courage on Artisan World depicted beings from across the galaxy standing together, facing their shadows with determination. The Symphony of the Conquered Knight, performed by a multi-species orchestra, became the official anthem of the Bravery Initiative. Children's books about brave beings facing imaginary fears became bestsellers in languages that didn't even have words for bestseller. Years later, as the galaxy settled into its new, braver normal, historians would look back at the Great Monster Crisis with a mixture of amusement and appreciation. What had started as a child's innocent question had forced some of the universe's most advanced civilizations to confront their most basic fears. The official federal archives contain thousands of documents about the crisis, scientific papers, economic analyses, military assessments, and diplomatic correspondence. But perhaps the most important document is also the simplest, a crayon drawing made by Mira Hayes, showing stick figures of various aliens holding hands around a bed, with a smiling sun labeled Bravery shining overhead. The drawing hangs in the entrance hall of the Federal Assembly, a reminder that sometimes the most profound truths come from the smallest voices. Next to it is a plaque that reads, "In Federal Cycle 2756, a human child asked about monsters under the bed. The galaxy learned to answer with courage." Today, half the galaxy still sleeps with lights on. Not because they're afraid of monsters, but because they've learned that light, whether external or internal, is a comfort worth having. The nightlight industry thrives, now marketing their products as confidence companions and courage catalysts. The feared economic collapse from energy drain never materialized, as new efficient technologies were developed and beings learned to generate their own light through bravery. The monster under the bed crisis, as it's now known in history texts, is taught as a case study in xenopsychology, mass hysteria, market adaptation, and ultimately, the power of perspective. Universities offer entire courses on the sociological implications of the event. Military strategists study it as an example of how imagination can be both a weakness and a strength. Mira Hayes grew up to become one of the Federation's most celebrated diplomats, known for her unconventional approach to problem-solving and her ability to find simple solutions to complex problems. She kept Mr. Flopsy, now carefully preserved in a stasis field, in her office. When asked about her role in the crisis, she would smile and say, "I just told them what every kid knows. Monsters are only as real as you let them be." The Crystari, those paragons of logic who had first confronted the monster, developed what they called comfort logic, a mathematical framework proving that emotional security enhanced rational thinking. They never admitted to keeping small, crystalline figures by their rest platforms, but sales records suggested otherwise. The warrior species incorporated monster checking into their battle rituals, turning fear confrontation into a mark of honor. First the darkness under the bed, then the darkness between stars, became a popular military motto. The most elite units wore badges depicting a child standing fearlessly before shadows. Other species found their own ways to adapt. The aquatic collectives created underwater light shows that served dual purposes: artistic expression and shadow elimination. The hive minds developed shared courage protocols where bravery could be transmitted through their collective consciousness like antibodies against fear. The philosophical implications continued to ripple through academic circles. The question, "What is real?" took on new dimensions when beings realized they could think things into effective existence. The branch of philosophy dealing with consensus reality and manufactured fears became a respected field of study. Children across the galaxy benefited most from the crisis. Where once bedtime had been a source of anxiety for many species young, it became an opportunity for courage cultivation. Bedtime stories evolved from simple entertainment to sophisticated psychological tools. The most popular series, Adventures in Courage Space, featured characters from various species learning to face their fears together. The anniversary of the Great Assembly Declaration of Bravery became a galactic holiday. Beings everywhere celebrated by purposefully turning off lights and telling stories in the dark, then triumphantly illuminating their spaces with the light of their own courage. The holiday's motto, "From darkness, bravery, from bravery, light," was inscribed in thousands of languages on monuments across federal space. The economic impact stabilized into what economists called the comfort economy. Beyond lights and stuffed animals, entire industries grew around the concept of emotional security. Insurance companies offered peace of mind policies. Real estate markets valued properties based on their courage quotient. The stock market included a bravery index that tracked civilization's collective confidence levels. Scientific advancement accelerated as researchers, no longer constrained by fears of the unknown, pushed deeper into mysterious phenomena. The discovery that dark matter wasn't monster-related led to breakthroughs in energy generation. The courage particle, initially proposed as a joke, turned out to have measurable effects on quantum fields. Perhaps the most lasting change was in how the galaxy viewed childhood wisdom. The Federal Council established the Youth Advisory Board, recognizing that sometimes the most complex problems require the simplest perspectives. Children from various species served as consultants on issues ranging from interstellar diplomacy to theoretical physics. The phrase, "ask a child," became common in scientific and governmental circles when faced with seemingly insurmountable problems. More often than not, the unfiltered honesty and imaginative approaches of young minds provided breakthrough insights that had eluded adult experts. In schools across the galaxy, the monster crisis was taught not as a cautionary tale about mass hysteria, but as a celebration of how facing fears collectively could unite civilizations. Students learned about the courage cascade effect, where one being's bravery could inspire entire populations to overcome their anxieties. The arts continued to flourish in the post-monster era. The genre of courage literature produced works that explored the nature of fear and bravery across species. The most acclaimed novel, Shadows and Starlight, told the story of the crisis from the perspective of an imaginary monster who was even more afraid of the aliens than they were of it. Museums dedicated to the crisis opened on major worlds. Visitors could experience historical recreations of darkened bedrooms, complete with ambiguous shadows and creaking sounds. The exhibits always ended in rooms filled with light and the laughter of children, reminding people how the crisis was ultimately resolved. The Veterans Association of the Monster Wars, a somewhat tongue-in-cheek organization, held annual reunions where beings shared their war stories of sleepless nights and shadow-jumping incidents. These gatherings, initially solemn affairs, evolved into celebrations of shared experience and collective growth. Even the most technologically advanced species admitted they had learned valuable lessons. The machines of prime computation acknowledged that their perfect logic had been insufficient to deal with irrational fears. They incorporated emotional processing units into their designs, recognizing that feelings, even seemingly irrational ones, were data worth processing. The diplomatic protocols of the Federation were updated to include cultural fear assessments. No longer did species assume that technological advancement correlated with emotional sophistication. The saying, "advanced enough to split atoms, wise enough to check under beds," became a standard measurement of civilizational development. The Great Library of Alexandria Station created a special wing dedicated to courage studies. It housed not only academic papers and historical documents, but also millions of personal accounts from beings who had faced their own monsters. Children's drawings hung next to complex mathematical theorems, all exploring the same question: what makes us brave? In the years following the crisis, several species admitted to discovering actual creatures living in their underbed spaces. These turned out to be harmless, symbiotic organisms that fed on dust and debris. They were promptly classified as domestic companions and became popular pets. The irony was not lost on anyone. The federal anthem was updated to include a verse about facing darkness with light from within. The melody, a collaboration between 14 different musical traditions, could be hummed by species without vocal cords and signed by those who communicated through movement. It always ended with what humans called a crescendo of courage. Trade relationships strengthened as species shared their traditional comfort items. The silk weavers of Web World saw demand soar for their luminescent blankets. The scent masters of Aroma 5 developed courage-enhancing fragrances. Earth's teddy bear exports reached unprecedented levels, with custom designs for every known physiology. The media learned valuable lessons about responsible reporting. The panic-inducing headlines of the early crisis days gave way to more measured coverage focused on solutions and community building. The prestigious Galactic Truth Award created a special category for courage journalism, reporting that informed without inflaming fears. Space exploration took on new dimensions. Where once survey teams had approached unknown systems with purely scientific instruments, they now included courage consultants trained to help crews face the psychological challenges of the unknown. The motto of the Explorers Guild changed from "into the unknown" to "into the unknown, unafraid." Marriage customs evolved in unexpected ways. Many species incorporated monster checking into their bonding ceremonies, with partners promising to help each other face fears throughout their lives. The exchange of comfort objects became as meaningful as the exchange of rings in human traditions. The gaming industry created a new genre, courage builders. These interactive experiences help beings practice facing fears in safe, controlled environments. The most popular game, Monster Negotiator, allowed players to befriend their imagined fears rather than fight them. Retirement communities adapted their services to address the unique fears of elderly beings. The Golden Light Years facilities featured round-the-clock courage support and specialized comfort protocols for every species. The advertising slogan "Brave at every age" resonated across cultures. Environmental design underwent a renaissance. Architects learned to balance the need for comforting spaces with practical requirements. The award-winning Fearless City on New Haven showed how urban planning could incorporate courage building into every street corner and public space. The legal system adapted to include fear impact assessments for new technologies and policies. No longer could innovations be judged solely on their practical merits. Their potential to generate new fears had to be considered and addressed. The landmark case Citizens versus the shadow casting building established important precedents. Agricultural worlds reported unexpected benefits from the crisis. The practice of courage cultivation, originally meant metaphorically, led to the discovery that plants responded positively to environments where fearless attitudes prevailed. Crop yields increased in what scientists called the bravery bloom effect. The transportation industry revolutionized travel comfort. Starships featured courage lounges, where passengers could address pre-flight anxieties. The fastest-growing cruise line, Fearless Voyages, specialized in helping beings overcome their travel-related fears while visiting beautiful destinations. Educational psychology advanced significantly. The monster method of teaching difficult subjects involved acknowledging fears about the material before addressing them with courage and clarity. Students who learned mathematics using monster metaphors showed improved performance and reduced anxiety. The dating scene across the galaxy incorporated courage compatibility into matching. Algorithms. The question, "How do you deal with monsters?" became a standard conversation starter. Support groups for courage couples helped partners navigate their fears together. Even warfare evolved. The psychological operations units of various militaries developed courage weapons, not tools of destruction, but methods of inspiring bravery in allies and even enemies. The theory was that brave beings made better decisions and were more likely to seek peaceful solutions. The peace movement adopted monster metaphors in their campaigns. "The real monsters are the fears that divide us" became a rallying cry for interspecies unity. Peace treaties began, including clauses about mutual courage support and shared monster-checking protocols. As the galaxy moved forward, the lessons of the monster crisis became integrated into the fabric of civilization. The federal constitution was amended to include the right to courage, ensuring that all beings had access to the tools and support needed to face their fears. Looking back on the crisis from a distance of years, historians identified several key turning points. The moment Mira first asked her question. The night the entire crystalline collective admitted to checking under their platforms. The day the first bravery consultant graduated from the academy. Each represented a step toward a braver, more united galaxy. The anniversary celebrations grew more elaborate each year. Parades featured giant puppet monsters being chased away by children armed with toy lightsabers and stuffed animals. Fireworks spelled out messages of courage across night skies. The festivities always ended with a galaxy-wide moment of darkness, followed by the simultaneous illumination of billions of lights, each representing an individual's triumph over fear. Philosophers debated whether the galaxy had truly become braver or simply better at managing fear. The consensus that emerged suggested both were true. The monster crisis had taught civilizations that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the decision to face it with tools ranging from night lights to teddy bears to the simple support of friends. The children who had lived through the crisis grew up with a unique perspective. They formed the Generation Brave, beings who had learned early that fears could be acknowledged, shared, and overcome. They brought this attitude to every field they entered, from politics to exploration to the arts. Memoirs from the crisis period became bestsellers. My Life as a Monster Researcher by Dr. Valeth provided an inside look at the scientific community's journey from panic to understanding. Teddy Bears and Starships, A Diplomat's Tale by Ambassador Hayes offered personal insights into the human role in the crisis. The tourism industry created courage trails, guided tours of significant sites from the crisis. Visitors could see the conference room where Mira first asked her question, the laboratory where the first monster detector was built. It never detected anything, and the assembly hall where the Declaration of Bravery was signed. Comic books and entertainment media embraced the monster theme with enthusiasm. The popular series Guardians of the Night featured a diverse team of heroes who protected the galaxy from both real and imagined threats. The catchphrase, "No monster too scary, no dark too deep," became a cultural phenomenon. Research into the nature of consciousness expanded. The monster crisis had shown that collective beliefs could have tangible effects on reality. Scientists studied how shared fears and courage could influence everything from quantum mechanics to social dynamics. The field of consensus reality studies became a respected discipline. The crisis also led to improvements in mental health care across species. The stigma around admitting fears diminished when even the most advanced civilizations acknowledged their anxieties about monsters. Therapy methods incorporated courage-building techniques, and monster counselors became a recognized profession. Interestingly, crime rates decreased in the post-crisis years. Sociologists theorized that beings who had learned to face imaginary monsters were better equipped to resist real-world temptations and pressures. The courage effect became a subject of intense study in criminology circles. The food industry wasn't immune to monster influence. Brave Bites cafes served comfort foods designed to boost courage. Monster-shaped cookies that children could symbolically defeat by eating became popular across cultures. Even formal diplomatic dinners included courage courses. The legacy of the monster crisis extended to spaceship design. Vessels featured comfort zones with soft lighting and soothing sounds. Emergency protocols included psychological support measures. The famous Deep Space Explorer-class ships were nicknamed Flying Teddy Bears due to their emphasis on crew comfort and courage support. Language evolved to include new terms. Monster checking became a verb meaning to confront fears directly. Teddy bearing meant providing comfort to someone facing anxiety. Doing a Mira referred to asking seemingly simple questions that revealed profound truths. The impact on child rearing was profound. Parenting guides across species included chapters on healthy fear management. The balance between protecting children and helping them build courage became a universal concern. The saying, "Raise them brave, not scared," appeared in countless languages. Multi-species colonies reported improved cooperation after implementing courage-sharing protocols. When beings helped each other face fears, cultural barriers seemed less significant. The colony on Haven Prime, with its famous monster-free zone welcome sign, became a model for interspecies harmony. Even architecture evolved. Buildings featured courage corners, specially designed spaces where beings could retreat to face their fears in safety. The revolutionary no shadow lighting systems didn't eliminate darkness, but made it less threatening. Furniture design eliminated unnecessary underspaces while maintaining aesthetic appeal. The Galactic Time Capsule project included artifact from the crisis, a first-generation monster detector, non-functional, a child's drawing of a brave alien, and a recording of the first Courage Day celebration. Future civilizations would learn how an entire galaxy learned to be brave together. Poetry and literature from the period reflected the transformation. The epic poem, When Shadows Danced, chronicled the journey from fear to courage. The children's book, The Monster Who Was Afraid of Children, became a classic, translated into every known language and several theoretical ones. The scientific method itself evolved to include fear factor analysis, acknowledging that researchers' anxieties could influence their observations. The famous Schrödinger's monster thought experiment explored whether a monster could exist in a quantum state of being both real and imaginary until observed. Religious texts were reinterpreted through the lens of the crisis. Ancient prophecies about darkness rising were understood as metaphors for facing fears. New spiritual movements emerged, teaching that divinity could be found in the courage to confront one's shadows. The Federal Reserve had to adapt to the new courage economy. Economic indicators included metrics for societal bravery levels. The famous market crash known as Black Bed Tuesday occurred when rumors spread about a new type of monster, but recovery was swift as courage protocols kicked in. Educational textbooks featured the crisis as a pivotal moment in galactic history. Students learned about the cascade of courage, how one child's question led to civilizational transformation. Essay questions asked students to analyze their own monsters and design courage-building strategies. The entertainment industry produced countless works inspired by the crisis. The blockbuster film Under the Bed won awards for its sensitive portrayal of multi-species fear responses. The musical Monsters, the Courage Symphony played to sold-out audiences across the galaxy. Technology companies developed apps for courage building. Monster Tracker, which tracked courage levels, not actual monsters, became the most downloaded application in galactic history. Virtual reality experiences allowed beings to practice facing fears in safe environments. The agricultural sector discovered that courage cultivation affected more than just crops. Livestock raised in fear-free environments produced higher quality products. The Happy Monster Ranch brand became synonymous with ethically raised, courage-infused food products. Fashion evolved to include courage wear, clothing designed to boost confidence and provide comfort. The famous designer Ix of Altair created the Brave Collection, featuring garments that change color based on the wearer's courage levels. Glowing pajamas became standard children's wear. The sports world embraced courage themes. New competitions tested mental bravery as much as physical prowess. The Galactic Courage Games featured events like shadow boxing, literally boxing with shadows, and Monster Marathon, running through darkened obstacle courses. Medical research revealed physiological benefits of courage cultivation. Beings who regularly practiced facing fears showed improved immune function and longer lifespans. The bravery boost to health became a recognized phenomenon, leading to new treatment protocols. The real estate market adapted to courage consciousness. Property values increased for homes with good monster management features. The most expensive penthouses boasted panoramic courage views and fear-free floor plans. Even Starship docking bays advertised their courage amenities. Diplomatic gift exchanges began, including courage tokens. The president of Earth famously presented the crystalline emperor with a teddy bear made of compressed starlight. The emperor reciprocated with a logic crystal programmed to emit soothing frequencies during scary moments. The Transportation Security Administration updated their protocols. Instead of just screening for weapons, they now offered pre-flight courage counseling. The phrase, "Are you carrying any fears that need to be declared?" became standard at checkpoints. Even tax codes reflected the new reality. Deductions were available for courage enhancement purchases. The category Monster Defense Expenditures appeared on official forms, though most claims involved night lights and stuffed animals rather than actual defensive systems. The insurance industry created new products, courage coverage policies that paid out if policyholders experienced documented fear events. The actuarial tables for calculating monster encounter risk became surprisingly sophisticated, despite no confirmed monster sightings. Social media evolved to include courage-sharing features. The popular platform Face Your Fears allowed beings to post about their monster-checking adventures and receive supportive comments. The Brave button replaced like on many networks. Wedding customs incorporated monster-checking ceremonies. Couples would jointly inspect under furniture before beginning their life together, symbolizing their commitment to facing fears as partners. The tradition spread across species, adapted to local customs. The judicial system established courage courts for fear-related disputes. The landmark case being Versus. Own Shadow established that individuals couldn't sue themselves for self-generated fears. Emotional support animals, or equivalent comfort objects, were permitted in all courtrooms. Emergency services added courage response units to their offerings. These specialized teams help beings dealing with acute fear episodes. Their vehicles, painted in soothing colors and equipped with comfort supplies, became known as bravery wagons. Space exploration protocols included mandatory courage training. No crew could embark on deep space missions without completing the darkness navigation course. The manual included a section on monster contingency plans, mostly involving group hugs and shared storytelling. The gaming industry produced educational courage builders. Monster Mediator taught conflict resolution with imaginary creatures. Courage Quest became the most played educational game, with players advancing by helping others overcome fears. Libraries created courage reading rooms with special lighting and comfort seating. Librarians trained in fear management helped patrons research scary topics. The Brave Readers program encouraged tackling challenging books with monster-themed bookmarks as rewards. Public speaking, already fear-inducing for many species, incorporated monster metaphors. Speakers learned to tame the podium monster and befriend the audience creature. Toastmasters clubs added Monster Master to their achievement levels. The pet industry experienced a transformation. Traditional pets were joined by courage companions, animals specifically trained to provide comfort during scary moments. The market for bioluminescent pets soared as beings sought living night lights. Urban planning incorporated courage zones into city designs. Parks featured brave spaces where beings could practice facing fears in natural settings. Street lighting followed the No Monster Left Behind initiative, eliminating dark corners where fears might lurk. The Postal Service offered courage cards for beings to send supportive messages. During Monster Awareness Week, mail carriers delivered special encouragement to every address. The stamps featured famous moments from the crisis, including Myra's first question. Professional development courses included courage components. Leadership in the Light taught executives to guide others through uncertainty. Sales Without Shadows helped commerce professionals address customer fears. Every industry adapted courage principles to their practices. Archaeological expeditions began including courage consultants. The theory was that ancient sites might harbor historical fears that could affect researchers. While no prehistoric monsters were discovered, teams reported feeling braver when exploring unknown ruins. The Weather Service added fear forecasts to their reports. Dark and stormy nights received courage advisories. The famous meteorologist Glurb of Neptune became known for ending forecasts with "Remember, you're braver than any storm." Retirement planning evolved to include courage preservation strategies. Financial advisors helped clients prepare for the scary years with both monetary and emotional resources. The slogan "Retiring Brave" appeared in countless advertisements. Theme parks created courage-building attractions. Monster Mountain allowed visitors to face fears. In a controlled environment, the Tunnel of Terrors ended with a celebration of bravery, complete with complimentary courage certificates. The construction industry developed fear-resistant materials. While they couldn't actually repel monsters since none existed, these materials provided psychological comfort. Buildings advertised their courage ratings alongside energy efficiency scores. Food packaging included courage-building messages. Cereal boxes featured Brave Bites games. Snack wrappers offered fear-facing tips. Even military rations included comfort items, recognizing that well-fed soldiers were braver soldiers. The energy sector invested in courage infrastructure. Power grids prioritized maintaining light in residential areas. The famous Blackout of Bravery incident led to backup systems, ensuring no being would face darkness unexpectedly. Museums created interactive fear exhibitions. Visitors could experience historical panics and learn courage techniques from different cultures. The Hall of Conquered Fears displayed items beings once found terrifying but had learned to face. The tradition of bedtime stories evolved dramatically. Professional story weavers toured the galaxy, sharing tales that built courage while entertaining. The Bedtime Broadcasting Network aired soothing, brave-making content across all time zones. Corporate culture embraced courage building. Team-building exercises included group monster-checking activities. Office designs eliminated underdesk spaces where fears might lurk. Courage breaks became as common as coffee breaks. The hospitality industry revolutionized comfort standards. Hotels advertised their monster-free guarantees and offered courage concierge services. The famous bravery suites included custom lighting, comfort objects, and fear-facing workshops. Even garbage collection adapted to the new paradigm. Sanitation workers checked under bins before collection, just in case. The "No Monster Left Behind" waste management motto appeared on vehicles galaxy-wide. Public art reflected the courage revolution. Murals depicted beings facing fears together. Sculptures incorporated lighting to eliminate shadows. The famous Courage Fountain on Capitol World attracted visitors seeking inspiration. The publishing industry created new genres: courage fiction, fear management manuals, and monster philosophy. Book clubs discussed not just plots, but how stories helped members face personal fears. Libraries hosted brave reading challenges. Scientific conferences included courage sessions. Researchers presenting scary findings, like universe-ending scenarios, balanced their talks with bravery-building exercises. The motto, "Data with dignity, fear with fortitude," guided academic presentations. The telecommunications industry offered courage calls, special rates for beings needing fear support. The Monster Hotline, which never received actual monster reports, became a 24/7 courage counseling service. Operators trained in multi-species comfort techniques. Space station design incorporated courage principles. Common areas featured soft lighting and comfort zones. Emergency protocols included psychological support measures. The International Space Station's Courage module became a model for fear management in confined spaces. The toy industry experienced a permanent transformation. Every toy now served dual purposes: entertainment and courage building. Building blocks came with fear-facing instructions. Action figures battled imaginary anxieties. Even puzzles included brave-making affirmations. Citizen science projects tracked courage levels across populations. The galaxy-wide bravery survey collected data on fear patterns and courage strategies. Participants earned citizen courage badges for contributing to the research. As the galaxy settled into its new, braver normal, annual commemorations of the monster crisis grew in significance. Mira Day honored the child whose innocent question had transformed civilization. Schools held courage pageants. Cities displayed light shows symbolizing the triumph over darkness. The crisis entered popular culture as a source of humor rather than fear. Comedians joked about the time entire civilizations were scared of imaginary beings. The phrase, "at least it's not monsters," became a way to put current problems in perspective. Diplomatic relations strengthened through shared courage experiences. Treaties included mutual courage assistance clauses. The famous Brave Together Accords committed species to helping each other face new fears as they arose. The Galactic Historical Society commissioned a comprehensive multi-volume history of the crisis. Scholars from every species contributed chapters analyzing their civilization's response. The work won awards for showing how shared fears could unite rather than divide. Museums competed to create the most comprehensive monster crisis exhibitions. Virtual reality experiences let visitors feel the initial panic and subsequent courage discovery. Gift shops sold replica first-generation nightlights as historical artifacts. Children's education emphasized the crisis as a positive example of galactic cooperation. Textbooks featured Mira as a hero who helped civilization level up emotionally. Students learned that asking questions, even silly ones, could lead to important discoveries. The anniversary of Myra's question became a holiday, celebrating curiosity and courage. Parades featured children dressed as monsters being chased by teddy bear brigades. Fireworks spelled out brave messages across night skies. Philosophers continued debating the crisis's deeper meanings. Had the galaxy actually been in danger? Were monsters real in some quantum sense? Did believing in them make them exist? The questions sparked endless academic discussions. The economic impact stabilized into sustainable courage industries. Market analysts tracked the bravery index alongside traditional indicators. Companies specialized in courage enhancement became blue-chip stocks. Political campaigns incorporated courage platforms. Candidates promised to keep the monsters at bay and maintain our brave new galaxy. Debates included questions about fear management strategies. The scientific community established the Institute for Courage Studies. Researchers investigated the relationship between bravery and everything from quantum mechanics to social dynamics. The annual Courage Conference attracted the brightest minds. Religious institutions adapted their teachings. Sermons addressed facing spiritual monsters. Sacred texts were reinterpreted through courage lenses. New denominations formed around the principle that divinity helped beings face their fears. The media evolved responsible reporting standards for potentially scary news. Journalists learned to balance truth-telling with courage preservation. The Report Bravely guidelines helped prevent future mass panics. Technology continued advancing with courage in mind. Personal devices included fear detection algorithms and courage-boosting apps. Smart homes automatically adjusted lighting based on occupants' bravery levels. The crisis's long-term effects on mental health were overwhelmingly positive. Beings who lived through it developed resilience and emotional intelligence. The generation raised post-crisis showed lower anxiety levels and higher courage scores. International law codified courage rights. The Universal Declaration of Bravery guaranteed every being's access to fear-facing resources. Courts ruled on courage-related cases with precedents from the crisis era. The arts flourished with monster themes. Operas dramatized the crisis with elaborate costumes and sets. Dance performances interpreted the journey from fear to courage through movement. Every medium found ways to explore the transformation. Sports evolved to include courage components. Athletes trained not just their bodies, but their bravery. The Courage Olympics featured events testing mental fortitude alongside physical ability. Gold medals went to the bravest, not just the strongest. The transformation was complete when archaeologists on a distant world discovered ancient ruins depicting beings hiding from shadow creatures. The revelation that fear of monsters predated spaceflight across multiple species validated the galaxy's journey. Every civilization had faced this fear. Together, they had conquered it. In the deepest archives of the Galactic Library, stored in quantum crystal matrices that would last until the heat death of the universe, lay the complete record of the monster crisis. Future civilizations would read about the time an entire galaxy learned to be brave because one small child asked if aliens had monsters under their beds. The final entry in the official history, written by an elderly Mira Hayes on the 50th anniversary of her famous question, read simply, "We learned that monsters lose their power when we face them together. The galaxy sleeps better now, not because the darkness is gone, but because we've learned to bring our own light." And indeed, across countless worlds, beings of every shape and size slept peacefully, some with night lights glowing softly, others clutching comfort objects of various descriptions. They had learned the greatest lesson of all. Courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to shine despite the darkness. The monsters, if they had ever existed, were nowhere to be found. Perhaps they had fled to darker corners of the universe. Or perhaps, as young Mira had suggested all those years ago, they had simply been waiting for someone brave enough to befriend them. In the end, half the galaxy did sleep with the lights on. But now they did it not from fear, but from choice. For they had discovered that light, whether from a star, a lamp, or the courage within, was always worth having. And sometimes on quiet nights when the stellar winds whispered through space stations and the cosmic background radiation hummed its ancient song, beings would tell their children about the time the entire galaxy learned to be brave. The stories always ended the same way, with a child's question that changed everything, reminding everyone that sometimes the most profound truths come from the smallest voices, and that being brave together is the greatest adventure of all.